Hello, everybody. My name is Clarence Napier, the multi-state insurance broker, licensed in the following states: Washington State, California, Texas, pending in Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, and Michigan. Today is November 12th, 2025, and the title of this insurance episode is What You've Always Wanted to Know About Long-Term Care, but Were Afraid to Ask. First of all, I would like to say, who does not need the insurance but still needs to care? So people who have real estate that they can sell, maybe one or two properties worth $300,000 to $400,000 each. They can sell a property and pay for their own care. And the care, based on where you live and what most people need, could be $6,000 to $12,000 a month, or $72,000 to $144,000 per year. To keep the math simple, I like to say just $100,000 per year. And there are many different options of how you spend that money, depending on the type of insurance carrier and plan that you select. So, again, the people who can afford to pay for their own care by liquidating assets may not need the insurance. And these could be people who can pay $14,000. They want their loved ones and to have the best care possible, and that could be 24-hour care. That could be 8 hours a day. That could be many different types of care the person wants. But for everyone else who would like to use the insurance company to pay for long-term care, that's what this discussion is about. Secondly, I need to give you a short history, because long-term care conversations could put people to sleep sometimes. But the history of long-term care, going back to about the late 90s until about 2010, long-term care carriers were charging premiums and they were paying claims. But what happened, maybe the amount they were charging for the insurance was too low, or the amount of claims that came in were too high, higher than what they predicted, their actuaries predicted. Maybe people, they thought were going to live 5 years, 7 years. Some people lived 10 years that stayed on claim that the insurance company had to pay for. So some of the insurance companies discovered that they could not afford to offer new long-term care insurance plans, so they stopped briefly, and they kind of stopped selling long-term care to individuals. There are some companies that will sell group long-term care to employees at companies, and that's because it's easier to measure the risk, meaning, people who work at companies tend to buy it at a younger age because it might be an employee benefit. So again, I want to keep the conversation about long-term care as simple as possible. So about 2012, 2013, long-term care carriers began to offer some options, and that's what this slide is about. So the first column, for people age 40 to 50, that's when people at a bare minimum start thinking about long-term care. And again, I'm using that number of $100,000 a year based on what people need, based on the state that you live in, based on the level of care that you might want. So age 40 to 50, the majority of those people do not have any health issues, so they tend to buy traditional long-term care. The only challenge with traditional long-term care is the same challenge they had maybe 10 years ago, before 2013, sometimes the premiums may go up once you sign the contract. And in the contract, it does say that premiums can be raised if the state that you live in decide to raise the premiums for everyone, not just you, but everyone. So for people who can afford to sustain a rate increase, maybe 2 or 3 times over the time that they're paying for care, then this particular column is for you. The only challenge with, again, column 1, traditional long-term care, people were discovering that they would live, or they would actually pass away before they needed care. That could be a person walking around today, they've never filed a long-term care claim, and they had like a sudden death. So all that money that they were paying for long-term care was never used. So let's move up to the second column, age 50 to 65, average health, maybe high blood pressure, maybe some cholesterol. You can do all the 6 activities of daily living. And we can talk about that if you call me at 866-901-9876. Again, I want to keep this as simple as possible. So insurance carriers started having the hybrid model, where you buy an annuity for long-term care, and if you needed the money for long-term care, you could either use it for long-term care or you can leave it in some type of death benefit situation. So that model is still around, and people use it, especially if they have average health, and and they can afford the premiums. And the good thing about the hybrid model, after sometimes 15 years, if you have not used it, the cash value of the long-term care plan has grown. And some people say, well, I haven't used it. I can probably fund my own long-term care expenses. Just cash me out. I'll take the money that I put in with the accumulated growth. And so at 15-year period, the person can cash out and get pretty much all their money back minus a few percentages or something. Again, we need to talk about that. So the third model is what's going on now for people age 60 to 85. Maybe they missed out on buying the traditional long-term care. Maybe they missed out or don't want the hybrid long-term care model. And most likely, people in this age group, they have some chronic conditions. Their health is less than average. And insurance carriers now have an upfront pay long-term care plan, where if you pay upfront, and that could be cashing in 401ks, it could be, these are the exchanges, exchanging money in one type of investment. Maybe you have 100,000, 200,000 in one type investment, and you shift it over to long-term care insurance company, and some of these plans will double or triple, sometimes quadruple if your health is real good. So if you put in $100,000, you can get $200,000 of long-term care, or $300,000 of long-term care for your $100,000. And again, if it seems like you won't use it, or you don't want to just keep that money in that particular insurance company contract, you can request a return of funds, or you can make the option of leaving it as a life insurance option. So these are the 3 long-term care plans for people who want long-term care insurance and can pay something, traditional, hybrid, long-term care, or the upfront pay. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, does Medicare pay for long-term care? Rare circumstances, has a lot to do with coming out of a surgical setting, hospital, setting, and it's a very limited benefit. I believe it goes up to 90 days, maybe 100 days, but please call me 866-901-9876. And some people ask me, well, what should I do now just to plan for potential long-term care situations? My recommendation is to contact your estate planning attorney or someone, your tax professional. Look at your trust. Talk to your attorney about how you have set up your trusts. Because I'm not an attorney, but I know sometimes you might need to, transfer assets into a trust, so that the Medicaid or Medi-Cal people in California won't tag you with having assets, and perhaps you can pay for your own long-term care when you get to that situation where maybe you never bought the insurance, and someone may have told you, well, Medicaid will pay, or Medi-Cal in California will pay. Well, they have things called a look-back period, where they may say, well, how much money did Jack have, or assets did he have 3 years ago or 5 years ago, depending on your state. And if they say, oh, you had $300,000 in assets, and maybe they will not pay for any type of long-term care for people. They'll say, well, first you need to spend your own money first, cash in your assets. There's a list of things that you may need to cash in. But again, talk to your estate planning attorney about this, because I am not an attorney. And once you have impoverished yourself, then some states will then provide some type of long-term care on Medicaid and Medi-Cal. But again, it's a very limited situation if you're in the hospital and you need it. But Medicaid, Medi-Cal, so in other words, long story short, if you see yourself having the means to, fund your long-term care in one of these three columns, I recommend that you call me, 866-901-9876, so we can look at your options. All information that we discuss is confidential and covered under HIPAA. Again, my name is Clarence Napier, the multi-state insurance broker. And again, my phone number is 866-901-9876, or you can visit my website at bestinsuranceplanning.com. Take care and have a great day.